Guys, Spider-Man No Way Home came out 5 years ago. Well, 4 and 1/4 years ago. And in honor of maybe the brand new day trailer coming out by the time this video actually goes public, it's probably not going to come out till May, depending on what I get scheduled and ready before then. But that's neither here nor there. I kind of want to talk about something that I think I've made TikToks about it, and I've talked about it with people that I know personally, but I've never done a YouTube video on it, which is crazy because I did talk about the story as it was unfolding back in 2019. But I have a conspiracy theory. I have a tinfoil hat theory about Spider-Man No Way Home and how it came to be the way that it was. Because, spoiler alert, I do not think that that was John Watts and Kevin Feige's plan for the third Spider-Man movie. So we're going to talk about what I think actually happened and how we got the movie that we got. If you're new here and you love Spider-Man, you love the MCU, you love Marvel, you love talking about movies in general, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And let me know if it does that little thing where like glows around the edges now that I've said to interact with it. Like the video, comment what your favorite Spider-Man movie is, or your favorite Spider-Man game, or your favorite Spider-Man actor, or your favorite Spider-Man comic book artist. My favorite Spider-Man movie is Into the Spider-Verse. My favorite Spider-Man actor is Andrew Garfield. My favorite Spider-Man comic book artist is going to be John Romita Sr. And then my favorite Spider-Man game is probably still going to be Ultimate Spider-Man for the PS2. Yeah, that sounds right. Now, it all starts, in my opinion, in 2018 when Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse comes out. The movie doesn't, break records at the box office or anything like that, but it does win awards, at the following award season, and it does spark a lot of interest in the idea of seeing all three Spider-Men on screen together. It's like, well, what else can we do with the Spider-Verse? How far can we take this? And Sony aren't stupid. They're, of course, seeing that. Well, maybe they are stupid because they made a trilogy of Venom movies without Spider-Man, and they did the same thing with Morbius. Well, they made a Morbius movie without Spider-Man. That was just a bad idea. Point is, Sony can see this, obviously, right? Shortly after that, the first trailer for Spider-Man Far From Home gets released, and we're talking about the multiverse. Quentin Beck is pretending to be from another universe, where it seems like fans are getting confirmation that there is a live-action Spider-Verse effort being made here, and it gets people's interest, it gets people talking about it. Obviously, Sony can see this. What happens right after that movie comes out? The deal that allows Marvel and Sony to share the character expires. They ran out of movies, basically. But the weird thing is, Sony doesn't opt to extend. They don't want to come back to the table. They're going to take Spider-Man, they're going to take him back home. And what are they going to do with him? A live-action Spider-Verse movie, obviously. That's what they want to do. Because they see that there's interest in that, and they alone have the power to make that happen. They can do it themselves because they own the rights to the Andrew Garfield and Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movies. Now, Kevin Feige, you can say a lot of things about that man, but you know what you can't say? That he's an idiot. He sees this. He knows what's happening. He sees the writing on the wall because he's worked with Avi Arad. He's worked with Amy Pascal. He knows how they think. He knows exactly what they want to do. So he goes to Bob Iger. He says, hey, this is what Sony is planning to do with the Spider-Man movies now that they've got full control of the character back. We can't let that happen without being a part of it, right? And so what do? They come to the table, they start negotiating all over again, and they do work out a deal. They do work something out that allows them to work together and use Spider-Man in the MCU going forward. And that's how Doctor Strange ends up in the movie. That's how you get these rumors of the Hulk and the Punisher. Well, rumors of the Hulk, confirmation of the Punisher being in Spider-Man Brand New Day. That's how these things start to happen. But I think that it does still come with strings. Now, you may be of the opinion or of the understanding that because of the fact that none of the Sony Marvel universe of characters or whatever those movies are called, none of those movies involve an actual Spider-Man, you may think it's because they weren't allowed to. Not so. In fact, they had the sole power to decide whether or not there was going to be a Spider-Man in those movies. They just chose not to do it. What they did get to choose, though, what they did get to decide, is that any character that they make a live-action movie about does not then get to show up in a Spider-Man movie produced and distributed by Marvel Studios and Sony Pictures as a collaborative effort. If it's made by Marvel Studios, they don't get to use Venom, Kraven, Morbius, or anybody that they've put in their solo movies. Now that's real. That's not, I didn't make that part up. I've been speculating up to this point, but that part is real. what I said about Sony not putting a Spider-Man character, or putting a Spider-Man in their Spider-Man character movies because they just didn't feel like it, that's true. Them also not allowing Marvel Studios to use characters that they have made solo movies about, that part's true too. I didn't make either of those things up, I promise you. Now here's where things get interesting, right? Tom Holland said in an interview around the time that the movie came out, obviously, that there was a backup plan to use Kraven the Hunter as a primary antagonist of Spider-Man 3 if they were not able to get their multiverse movie to work. I think that that's total BS. I think that that was the original plan, right? Because, and it's not just because this was a theory that I came up with way back in 2019. It just makes sense that if we're doing characters that have never been in the movies before, and we're pulling from pretty early in Spider-Man's career, that we do Kraven the Hunter next, now that he is like the most wanted criminal in the world. He gets on Kraven's radar. He's like, that's the most dangerous game. I'm gonna hunt him. I want that. But look at when the Kraven movie got announced. It was announced in May 2021, before there was even a trailer for No Way Home out. I think that the deal that they made precluded them from making a movie with Kraven, because the trade-off was like, well, you get to have a piece of the pie from this multiverse movie that we want to make, but we still want to bet on this Kraven character. Maybe they made the movie completely expecting that that movie would flop. Maybe they did it to sabotage the character in general, because they knew that John Watts and Kevin Feige had ambitions of wanting to use the Kraven character and didn't want them to have him. Is Sony that petty? Absolutely. Sony is 145,000% that petty. Whether it's their music division, whether it's their video game division, Sony has had a 50-year-long history of being exactly that petty, no less. But you know who else they take off the table with that movie? The Rhino, another classic long-standing Spider-Man villain. After they botched him in The Amazing Spider-Man 2, they botched him again in Kraven the Hunter, but in doing so, they prevent Marvel Studios from being able to use the character. I'm also willing to bet that there's something in the water, something in the litigation, that says any villain that they use in Spider-Man No Way Home cannot then have a new version appear in the MCU for Tom Holland to specifically deal with. Now, that part I am speculating, but does it really sound so beyond the scope, given what we've already talked about? I think it's entirely possible that Sony made it so that Marvel cannot use Dr. Octopus, Green Goblin, Sandman, Electro, or the Lizard in any upcoming MCU movies. And I think that they did that maybe to devalue the brand, because even if there is no litigation behind it, it would kind of lessen the impact of these characters if Tom Holland's version of Spider-Man meets them for the very first time after having already dealt with multiversal versions of them. And this is something that I've been saying since No Way Home came out. It's not going to be interesting for Tom Holland's Spider-Man to get his own Dr. Octopus or Green Goblin now. If he ever meets someone named Otto Octavius or Norman Osborn, he's immediately going to be suspicious of them. And I just feel like that takes like all of the interest out of the story. Now, a talented writer can still make something good out of that, but the MCU is suffering a severe shortage of talented writers at this time. Either that or Kevin Feige is putting so many limitations and or regulations on the stories being told and created over at Marvel that it's just equaling out to be the exact same thing no matter what the actual core of the problem is. But the point is, there's precedent for this as well. Now that the second Spider-Verse movie has come out and made so much money, I think it's entirely possible that Sony wants to revisit the live-action multiverse again. Or the live-action Spider-Verse again, because it made so much money last time, the animated one is doing so well as well, there's clearly interest for it in the video game sphere, and so obviously, Sony's going to want to capitalize as much as they can. Oh, we also took Carnage off the board. Marvel can't use Carnage either, but whatever. And we've seen this kind of happen in the opposite direction. When Disney, or when Disney wanted the X-Men and the Fantastic Four, they were doing everything in their power to devalue the brand, to make those characters unpopular, to make them obscure so that they could buy it back at a lower price. So what did they do? They killed off Wolverine. They made it to where no Foxverse characters, no X-Men, no Super Skrull, no Doctor Doom, none of that. That none of those characters were available in Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite. They replaced Magneto with Captain Marvel and said, oh, well, this is, I mean, it's going to make no difference. You only like Magneto because of his 8-way dash. And even before that, like, I would say around 2012 to 2013 is when the initiative started, because they killed off Johnny Storm, the most popular character of the Fantastic Four, and they replaced him with Spider-Man. There was so much weird stuff going on, and now we're kind of seeing something like that happen in the opposite direction, where I think that Sony Pictures is trying to sabotage the perception of Spider-Man movies under Marvel Studios so that they can get the character back and they don't have to share anymore, and they can make as much multiversal content as they want. Is this a good idea? Absolutely not. But when was the last time Sony had a good idea? Probably when they let Marvel Studios start making movies about Spider-Man as a character, and they started raking in billions of dollars. But what did they do at that exact same time? A trilogy of Venom movies. I don't understand. You don't understand. It's impossible to understand because they're thinking with portals. They're thinking in 4D. It's beyond our realm of understanding. So the timeline as I see it, right? Spider-Verse comes out, wins awards, makes a lot of moves. After its video release, Sony sees that. Sony also sees the response to people seeing the Far From Home trailer, and they think that their hopes of a live-action Spider-Verse film are starting to materialize. And so after that movie comes out, they completely back out of their deal when it's time to renew. They do not extend the contract. They're like, we're going to make this movie that the fans want to see. Marvel and Disney, they understand that immediately. They know exactly what Sony wants to do. They pretty much drag them back to the table. It's like, look, whatever your terms are, we'll play ball. Because they know that a live-action Spider-Verse movie is coming and it's going to do gangbusters, and they need it. They convince Sony, like, hey, we'll make more money together than either one of us could do separately on something like this. They renew the contract for, I actually don't know exactly how long. I think that there's like maybe 2 more movies left on it. Now, this is where things get interesting. Sony, basically, they accept a handshake with their fingers crossed behind their backs because they know exactly what they're going to do to sabotage Marvel, or to sabotage, Marvel, and the reception of Spider-Man under their management so that they can get the character back and do everything that they've ever wanted to do. They restrict them from having access to certain characters. They dilute the perception of certain characters, because I've also even heard it said that the reason that MJ is not Mary Jane Watson, but is instead Michelle Jones Watson, is because that's part of the deal that Sony struck. It's like, okay, you can have these characters and make movies with these characters, but you have to reinvent them. You cannot have the regular white, red-haired Mary Jane. You have to do something weird. You can't have just a regular Adrian Toomes Vulture. You have to do something weird in case we want to make a video about that character, because in case we want to make a movie about that character, because we do still own the rights to that character. That's how I've heard it described as well. So yeah, I think that Sony has nefarious intentions here. I think that's the only reason that they would have possibly agreed to split the profits on a movie like Spider-Man No Way Home with a company like Disney. I think that they're playing the long game, and I think that they're playing a stupid game, and they're going to win a stupid prize. But we'll come back to this in 10 years, and we'll see if I was right. Let me know if you agree with anything that I've said so far, or if you think I'm absolutely out of my mind, if you think it's literally just not that deep, whatever it is, whatever you think, please comment below and educate me. And as always, if you want more videos from me, go ahead and click somewhere on the screen. There's going to be 2 more for your entertainment and for your enjoyment. Merry Christmas.